Blessings, good evening. We have some questions to answer tonight. So, first question. Venerable Ajahn, is it bad karma to take your old sick dog to the vet and have her put down? Well, simply speaking, yes, it is. If you go to the vet with a sick dog or any other sick animal with the intention to have the animal put down, killed, destroyed, that is the intention to kill. So if the dog ends up dead, then you've made the karma of killing and involved the vet too. And the vet probably has no choice. If you turn up with a very sick animal, they have no choice but to put it down. Really, this question you should be asking or discussing before you even get a pet. Because if you're considering getting a pet dog, cat, turtle, fish, parrot, whatever, there will come that day when the pet gets old and sick, and then you'll face this dilemma. If you're following the Buddhist path of non-violence, non-killing, keeping the first precept, then really if you take on a pet or any kind of animal, farm animal or anything, really you would be undertaking to look after that animal for the whole of its life and not euthanizing or killing it for any reason. So if the dog is old and sick, rather than taking it to the vet, you could just care for it at home. Practice compassion as you have been, hopefully, through the life of that pet. You might say it's your duty. If you've brought this pet into the world, either from birth or purchasing it, then it's your duty to care for it, even when it gets old and sick. I would say, from what I've observed and what makes sense to me, like if that pet dog or any other kind of animal could speak, you would say, "Don't euthanize me, don't put me down." And my own experience of caring for one or two stray dogs until they die is that even though they're in pain and have various injuries and illnesses, they still seem to appreciate the person giving them love, food, water, till the end, even though they might be in pain. Just as we do with human beings, we haven't reached that point yet in society where we put people down, although there is a lot of discussion of that, and in roundabout ways we're moving that direction where people are having more choice on euthanasia and so on. But generally speaking, we care for the sick, the elderly, until they die, and we don't think about putting people down. In the same way, we don't need to think about putting animals down. As we know from Buddhist cosmology, animals are just one realm, people are one realm, ghosts, hell realm beings, another realm, and then heavenly beings and Brahma gods are another realm. All beings have consciousness, all beings love life and want to live, and as we cultivate compassion and wisdom, we try to cultivate compassion towards all beings, including old sick dogs and anything else. Probably one of the dangers of modern society, isn't it? We become more materialistic, so even pets, sometimes deliberately, sometimes unconsciously, are becoming a sort of an adornment, decoration for the owner, the family, the person. And so there's this sort of slightly materialistic way of approaching pets, and so when they've reached the end of their life, they can no longer give us the happiness we want. But that's often, if we're honest, there's a certain selfishness in that your pet is there to make you happy. And when you're doing other things, when you can forget your pet, when you're bored or you're back home with nothing to do, and then your pet becomes interesting to you again. I may be simplifying it a bit, but there's this tendency to see the pet more as something that, when it comes to the end of its life, then you have it put down because it can no longer give you the happiness that you want from that pet. So maybe we have to also look at our own attachment to pets and see, where's that coming from? Is it the pet? We're there to help the pet, or is the pet there to help us, make us happy? And it's something to explore through your practice, your relationship, obviously to other people, but also to animals, pets. Next question. Lumpo, what is Miccha Vayama? So we just chanted the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta with translation, the Buddha's teaching on the Four Noble Truths, explaining what is suffering, its origin, its cessation, the end of suffering, the path that leads to the end of suffering. And that is the Noble Eightfold Path, and that includes all these factors beginning with the prefix samma, which means right or correct. So like right view, samma ditthi. And each factor has this prefix of samma, right view, right thought, and so on, including right effort, samma vayama. It's right because it's practiced in accordance with the Buddha's enlightened wisdom. If practiced properly, it will be a factor that will help the individual come out of their unenlightened state to a state of awakening, enlightenment. But of course, like so many things in life, you have the factors of the Eightfold Path, the Noble Eightfold Path. Each of them will have its opposite. So just as you have right view, you can have wrong view. So right view is, say, recognizing that there is karma and there are there is what you would call wholesome, skillful karma, rooted in non-greed, non-anger, non-delusion, and there's such a thing as unwholesome, unskillful karma, rooted in greed, anger and delusion. Karma has its consequences, its results, which come back to us, and therefore the Buddha encouraged us to cultivate wholesome karma, abandon, give up unwholesome karma. So with right view, one, that leads directly onto right effort. It supports all the other factors of the path as well, of course, but right effort, samma vayama, is based on the understanding that unwholesome karma is true. It leads us to suffering, but it can be abandoned if we take responsibility for our actions, speech, and thinking. We can abandon unwholesome karma through our own effort. It's not the effort of other people or gods or God. It's not random, it's through our own efforts. So the Buddha encouraged us to cultivate right effort, the effort to abandon, or the effort to prevent unwholesome karma that has not yet arisen from arising, and unwholesome mental states that have arisen that would lead us to make more unwholesome karma, abandoning them, and then the effort to bring up wholesome mental states that lead on to wholesome karma that have not yet arisen, and the effort to develop them further, those that have arisen. So that's right effort. So of course there is such a thing as wrong effort, the effort to bring up unwholesome states of mind and make unwholesome karma, and the effort to abandon wholesome states of mind and the effort to make wholesome karma, abandon that, give that up. So, most extreme cases would be maybe people acting in criminal ways, antisocial ways, violent ways, putting forth effort to kill, to steal, to abuse, to hurt others. People putting forth effort to cheat on their partner, cheat on someone else's partner, effort to lie, abuse, get drunk, and so on. All of that requires effort. So all the efforts we make to go against the 5 precepts, to earn a living in a way that is taking advantage or hurting other people, all of these are examples of wrong effort. And we can be really good at making wrong effort. As I know from my own life, when I was a teenager, I could spend all night partying. Whereas when it's time to make right effort and spend all night meditating, it's harder, isn't it? I know that for a fact. You have to work at it and retrain yourself to make the right effort of practicing mindfulness through the night. But to go partying, drinking, partying, dancing, chasing the girls, whatever, that doesn't take so much effort at all, but it's still wrong effort. Effort to follow our greed in different ways. It doesn't. We can put a lot of effort into indulging defilement, following our greed, seeking out pleasant experiences, attaching to pleasant experiences, dulling the mind through becoming obsessed with and indulgent in pleasure in different kinds. We're very good at that. Wrong effort. Venerable Angulimala was probably a good example of wrong effort. Before he met the Buddha, he had one spiritual teacher who encouraged him in a wrong way to kill people, saying this will lead to liberation. And he was very good at it. So he put a lot of effort into killing people. Killed 999 people before he met the Buddha. Good example of wrong effort. Right effort is the effort to not kill people. So even if you're completely angry with a mind full of violent thoughts, that effort to say, no, I'm not going to act on these, that's right effort. The effort to break the precepts, or the intention to break the precepts comes up, but the effort not to follow that is right effort. The effort to establish mindfulness is right effort. The effort to ruin your mindfulness is wrong effort. So doing things that take away your mindfulness might be something very innocuous, like just what we call idle chatter, sampapalapa. Spending all day chit-chatting. Ajahn Chah used to talk about this a lot, teach the monks. You spend an hour meditating, putting right effort into bringing up mindfulness, cultivating insight. That's really good. But then you go away and you spend 2 hours chit-chatting and all your mindfulness drains away. He said it's like a water jar with a hole in it. You fill up your water jar, that's like your 1 hour of meditation, developing mindfulness. And then your 2 hours of idle chatter, gossiping, joking, speaking stuff which is probably not much use to anyone. It's like that leaky hole in the water jar, and all the water that you filled up, now it all just leaks out and you end up with nothing. You have no samadhi, no mindfulness left at the end of it. We do that all the time, sometimes just through chit-chat, socializing, sometimes scrolling through the internet, sometimes just doing things, eating, sleeping, whatever. We do things which indulge our defilements, wrong effort, and take away the fruits of our good practice, sort of diminish our right effort or cancel out our right effort. Sometimes it's momentary, so you're putting a lot of effort into being restrained, being mindful, restrained in your speech, your actions, and then suddenly some defilement comes up really strong, and you blurt it out or you act out in some way, and it's like, blowing it all. The wrong effort takes over. So you get the people who come to the monastery with good intention and put effort into following the monastic routine, helping with the chores, meditating, listening to the talks, doing it all well, and then they reach a point where they just feel they can't stay anymore. Their defilements are coming up too much. They want their freedom to follow their desires. Although that's not freedom, is it? That's being a slave to your desires. But they say, I want my freedom, so they run away. Some people even run away in the middle of the night. Or they just find an excuse to leave early and off they go. So that's the end of right effort, and maybe wrong effort starts to come into their behaviour. So life is a battle between right and wrong effort, isn't it? All the time. Can be subtle things as well, like with our views. Wrong effort maybe is absorbing a lot of wrong information, wrong views, superstitions, things coming from not very wise places in the world, absorbing it, and so you're putting all your effort into absorbing wrong views, wrong beliefs, and then you've got to deal with the consequences of that. You have a mind full of all these wrong beliefs and wrong views. So the effort to listen to the good Dhamma, associate with Kalyana Mitta, listen to the good Dhamma is right effort as well, to help straighten your views out. And that often takes time because we've accumulated so many wrong views. We think happiness lies in places where it doesn't really lie. You think, when I get the money I want, I'll be happy. When I get the partner I want, I'll be happy. When I get the thing I want, I'll be happy. And not seeing that all this wanting is still going to cause us suffering because it's still conditioning our mind. So every aspect of the Eightfold Path has its opposite. Wrong mindfulness, wrong samadhi, wrong effort, wrong livelihood, wrong action, wrong speech, wrong thought, and wrong view. They're the causes of suffering. So sometimes the teachers talk about it like your mind spins in two directions, like the right view and the path is spinning one way, you might say clockwise. Wrong view is spinning out the other way, the opposite way, and it leads to the totally opposite result. More suffering, being bound up more with the world. That's the fruits of wrong effort, wrong view, wrong effort. you become more entangled in the world and you end up with more suffering. Next question. In non-Buddhist countries, there seems to be a lot of crossover between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. Is that a problem? Only if you make it a problem. Everything is like that, isn't it? You can make a problem out of anything. It's one of Luang Por Sumedho's catchphrases. Don't make a problem out of it. So yes, of course, Buddhism is in new territory in Australia or any other kind of traditionally non-Buddhist country. It's like an open playing field. So Buddhists will come in from overseas, information comes in, and people they're attracted to, or they have connections with different Buddhist traditions. So some encounter Tibetan Buddhism and find that appealing and inspiring for them. Some encounter different Buddhism from different countries, Thai Buddhism, which is our background, or Sri Lankan, or Burmese, Chinese, Zen Buddhism, Korean. So of course each Buddhist tradition tends to be stemming from one country or another, and then there's movement of people, movement of information, and people from this country or from other parts of the world will go particularly into Asia, and learn about Buddhism and take what they've learned back and some of the practices. But of course nowadays we say it's a supermarket, spiritual supermarket or smorgasbord of different Buddhist traditions, teachings, practices, and of course non-Buddhist things as well. So it's very normal that people are practicing one type of Buddhist meditation, but maybe read Buddhist books on other things, read Zen, but meditate on Anapanasati, but then they also do some yoga and they do some other spiritual practice. Some people are mixing Buddhism with Christianity, Hinduism. Some people are mixing Theravada practices and philosophy with Mahayana. I don't think this is anything new. Even way back in the time of the Buddha, there were many sects outside of Buddhism, obviously not Buddhist as well as Buddhism, and then after the Buddha died, even Buddhists started to develop different schools or different sects. Quite often they lived side by side happily, like at Nalanda University in northern India. For many years there were what we now call Mahayana Buddhists, these different sects, and the Theravada Buddhists living side by side, and they might have some disagreements over their philosophical outlooks and some aspects of the practice, but they also had a lot in common, and quite often they could live together happily. As Buddhism has spread around the world, particularly around Asia, and now out to the rest of the world, of course, things do get, people emphasize different aspects of the teaching, and so over the years, and the spread of Buddhism, what we now call Mahayana Buddhism has developed. Say, one kind in Tibet. Even Buddhism in Tibet, it's built on top of the pre-existing religion, the Bon religion, which is more like spiritualism, animism, and there's a bit of mixture there. And the same in India, Hinduism, deity worship and so on, mixed in with Buddhism. And then in somewhere like Thailand, you've got a bit of Brahmanism, Hinduism, in some of the basic practices of people who call themselves Buddhists. You've also got a bit of Chinese and Taoist influence, and then Mahayana influence. So even in a Theravada Buddhist country like Thailand, you've got Theravada Buddhist monasteries with Kuan Yin shrines in them. So it's nothing new, I think. And in the West, you find it as well. And you could say we have opportunities, so if people find one aspect of Mahayana Buddhism inspiring, the chanting, the philosophy, a meditation technique, a teacher, a guru, well, if you find them inspiring and it's helped you, then carry on. Do it well. Whatever you've learned from Mahayana Buddhism, do it well, put your heart into it, and you'll get more out of it. If you've been inspired by Theravada Buddhism, the techniques, vipassana, the chanting, a teacher, then put your heart into that. And if you find you're doing a little bit of both, well, it's not necessarily a problem, but just be careful of the danger of too much picking and choosing, because it means you often only develop a superficial understanding of what you're involved with, and it can lead to some confusion. You know, the old joke is, today I'm a bodhisattva, tomorrow I'm practicing to be an arahant, and the day after I'm practicing to be a bodhisattva again, and the mind sort of flipping around. So the kilesas can subtly come into our approach to spiritual practice and even Buddhism. What bits of Mahayana Buddhism you take up, what bits of Theravada, and could be based on delusion, attachment, as much as from wisdom. So you have to be careful of that. Just as an observation, in the Mahayana countries, they seem nowadays more and more interested in vipassana meditation retreats and techniques, because they seem to have lost that a bit in countries, say like China, maybe Korea, maybe Taiwan, and so on. It's not that the tradition of vipassana or Zen or developing samatha and insight meditation was never there. It's just it seems to have faded a little bit. And a lot of the practices are very faith-based, a lot of chanting, strong faith, and a lot of service and dana. But sometimes it's harder to find teachers who can teach the wisdom practices, the wisdom teachings like vipassana. So when I've travelled, I haven't travelled much, but when I have travelled in those countries, there seems to be a lot of interest. People want to find out about that side of it. It's interesting, when the Dalai Lama came to Melbourne, he gave a talk the last time he was in Melbourne, saying, you Tibetan Buddhists should be practicing more like the Theravadins and reflecting on the Four Noble Truths and using them as a structure for your reflection in the development of your practice. Talking more like a Theravada teacher. But of course, all the traditions come from the one Buddha, and the one Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, taught the Dhamma, taught the Vinaya. And sometimes it's good to see that maybe the similarities between the traditions, Mahayana, Theravada, and the different schools of Buddhism, are maybe more important than the differences. And you can find common threads, similarities in the schools. But the important thing is, don't make a problem out of it. Certainly don't get caught into division and animosity or conceit. Beware of that. We know best, we're better than you, bigger than you. And Mahayana is the great vehicle, Theravada or Hinayana is the lesser vehicle, the small vehicle. And don't get caught into the conceit or looking down on the other side, because if you're practicing the Buddhist path, whether you're practicing as a Theravada or Mahayana, you're cultivating kindness, compassion, insight into impermanence, into emptiness of self. You should be seeing conceit and arrogance as a danger, as kilesa, as defilement to be abandoned, whoever you are. And compassion and harmony and kindness are qualities to be developed, and that comes in all the traditions and all the Buddhist teachings. So there's no real place in Buddhism for division. We certainly can discuss and maybe have friendly arguments about our understanding, to deepen our understanding, but not to go into animosity or ill will or even hatred. Doesn't make any sense because it's not what the Buddha taught, is it? So I'd say whatever practice you found has brought you peace, brightened your heart, helped you to see defilement, greed, anger, delusion, helped you to abandon greed, anger and delusion, practice that. Put your heart into it. And we have a saying in Thailand, in the Thai meditation tradition, if you meet a bodhisattva, a true bodhisattva, somebody who's committed to the bodhisattva path, to becoming a Buddha, a future Buddha, for a long time, for many lifetimes, or you meet an arahant, you won't be able to tell the difference, because they're going to teach you the same things. The bodhisattva is still going to teach you the Four Noble Truths, because that's what Buddhas teach. The arahant will teach you that, because that's what they've realized. And you might not know who is the bodhisattva and who is the arahant, if they're practicing well, if they're well developed, mature in their development of the path. They're going to be much the same. And maybe you might know someone, or you meet a teacher, who you think, oh, must be an arahant, and then someone later tells you, actually they made a vow to become a Buddha, so they're a bodhisattva. And you, like me, when I was a young monk, you go, huh? Because you can't really tell sometimes. The bodhisattva, the arahant, will appear much the same. Why? Because they both keep precepts. They're both peaceful, they develop samadhi, maybe they develop deep samadhi, not only the 4 jhanas, but the 8 jhanas and the abhinya, the psychic powers. Maybe you really can't tell the difference. So, when people do get caught into the differences, it tends to be just based on views, opinions, book knowledge, and so on. And a bit of healthy difference is fine, but be careful, because if that difference becomes a strong attachment, then it can become an obstacle in your practice and a cause of suffering. Last question. When I'm peaceful, my mind displays bright white light. Is this important? Is there anything I need to do when this happens? No, just carry on practicing, maintaining your mindfulness, whatever happens. Always, number one, maintain mindfulness. So whatever technique you're using to meditate and train in mindfulness, keep that going. Bright lights emerge or they don't, keep the mindfulness going. Whether you're reciting word, a phrase, you're focusing on the breath, you're cultivating insight into or the contemplation of death, or contemplating the body, or corpse meditations, or metta, brahmavihara, there's many meditations. Number one priority is to be mindful from moment to moment and with clear comprehension and wisdom from moment to moment. Then you're on safe ground, whatever happens. So it is quite common that as the mind calms down and we start letting go of the hindrances, one aspect of the peaceful mind is that it tends to become brighter. So we have luminosity, radiance, and white light is probably the most common, but not the only colour that the mind displays as you calm down. Some people have blue light, purple light, green light, orange light. It's the radiance of the peaceful mind, but the important thing is to maintain your mindfulness, because with mindfulness you have equanimity, objectivity, you can see or know the mind from the moment to moment, and this is where stillness comes from, and you start letting go of all the hindrances more and more on a deep level. You're really letting them go, at least for a period of time. And that includes doubt. So, what is this? What is the light? If there is light emerging in the mind, all the doubt about it, worry, concern, even fear, You say that you have this light. As your mind becomes more peaceful, the light becomes brighter and brighter and more radiant. It can kind of upset you or put you off a bit. So again, keep to the mindfulness and just know it. Oh, bright light, okay. That's what's going on, but don't let your mind stray into thinking about it, doubting about it, wondering about it, or kind of exploring it with a kind of curiosity. Curiosity killed the meditator. We've already said we don't kill pets this evening, so we don't kill the cat, as the saying says, but we do let our curiosity kill our meditation by wandering into this light and what is this, and looking at it and exploring it and going to the centre of it, to the edge of it. All this movement of mind will kill your mindfulness and distract you. And you'll probably find your mind slips back to a more normal state and all the light disappears. Even if you maintain mindfulness well, and your mind is very calm and focused, the light may disappear anyway. It's very common for light, nimitta and radiance just to come up for a while and then pass away quite naturally. And it doesn't necessarily mean you've lost all your mindfulness. It's just the mind itself in that is becoming peaceful, and the light is a sign. It's a sign saying you're peaceful. Just as other aspects of piti and sukha can come up, waves of piti, feelings of lightness, tears, hair standing on end, they come and go. They're not necessarily going to be intense all the time that you're meditating or all the time that you're peaceful. They may come and go. So if your light, radiant light, disappears, well, don't get too sad about it or don't crave it. Just notice, oh, it was there, now it's gone, it's impermanent. And it's just proving to you that everything is impermanent. Even light nimittas are impermanent. Piti and sukha, these factors of samadhi, are impermanent. The important thing is to come back to the mindfulness always. Maintain the mindfulness. From there you get equanimity, and mindfulness supports insight, wisdom, clarity, understanding, impermanence, for example. Light nimittas don't always disappear. Of course, if you become more and more still, more and more concentrated, mind and body become really still and the hindrances fade out completely, well, then you may be left with a very bright, light mind. Radiant mind, like someone's turned the sun on, while a very powerful bright light in your mind. Ajahn Chah always used to say, nimittas, number one, always see them as impermanent, subject to degenerations or suffering, and not self. Don't take your nimitta as a self, just know it as a phenomena that arises and ceases. And number two, he said, when your mind is calm, then turn to contemplate the body. So perhaps even more useful than the light nimitta is to turn attention to investigating your own body, the 32 parts of the body, or the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, or the corpse meditations. All of these different aspects of body contemplation also can bring up nimittas. So whether it's a light nimitta associated with the breath, or a body nimitta, a part of the body, or the body as a corpse, what you find is at first you'll get nimittas just arising, passing away, what they call ugaha nimitta. It's just temporary, initial, preliminary, and then initial nimitta, but maybe not very stable. But if you practice regularly and your mindfulness and samadhi improve, you may be experiencing nimittas that stay much firmer for longer. So you may develop that skill to focus on a part of the body. So it's very common for meditators to focus on the bones, or an organ, or the skin, or one part of the body. and the nimitta becomes very clear and very stable. What we call patipaga nimitta. But this is for somebody who's maybe practicing a lot and developing it over a long period of time too. So nimittas, keep your wisdom about you as you practice meditation. Some people will see and experience nimittas, some people won't. With wisdom, you're always seeing them as impermanent, as not self, rather than grasping hold of them as some kind of result or reward from the practice, or getting excited by them, or disappointed by them, or reacting to them in one way or another, liking them, disliking them, wanting them, not wanting them. Of course, many other nimittas arise. If you're peaceful, you may see visions of people or places. Sometimes people have smells, or different kinds of smells, see images, hear sounds. Some people hear sounds, strange sounds. So there's a variety of different nimittas that can come through our senses. The important thing is maintain mindfulness. Don't get lost in them, don't proliferate about them, but just observe them as phenomena that arise, pass away. Keep your mindfulness. So maybe that's enough on that for tonight. So we wish you well with your practice, and we'll see you again next time.